Bashar al-Assad, the Syrian president, is now in China. This is huge news. This is his first visit to China since 2004. Okay? And if you look at what's been happening in the past year, Bashar al-Assad and Syria as a country is being brought back into the fold, right? So not just when it comes to the Arab League, which we saw a few months ago in summer, and not just with Jordan and Saudi Arabia and Tunisia and so on, but also internationally, right? And this is a huge slap in the face to the United States. I mean, let's just say it up front. Huge slap in the face. I mean, can you imagine how angry and upset the spooks in Washington are right now? Like, just crying their eyes out when they see this. Oh, they've been working over a decade, right? Those poor souls, they've been working over a decade to make sure that Bashar al-Assad is removed from power and Syria is turned into another vassal client state in the Middle East that has no autonomy, no independence, nothing. So Thursday, Bashar al-Assad arrives in China, and remember, he's being invited to China, okay? And this is at the same time that you have the Asian Games beginning, so there's the opening ceremony, which he'll also be attending. And, he gets the red carpet treatment. Make no mistake about it. There's the red carpet treatment through and through. I got such a funny comment now from Sam K. Thank you for the donation. I appreciate it. Sam is saying that the funniest and the best part of Assad being in China is knowing that somewhere in Washington, D.C., Charles Lister is crying into his pillow. Yeah. The Al-Qaeda groups didn't work. They didn't do their job. Oh my God. I mean, I really cannot overstate how important this is, because there are multiple angles to this. Why would Xi Jinping, why would China invite Bashar al-Assad at this time specifically? Well, it's because, when we talk about the Belt and Road Initiative, which Syria joined last year, which is basically the revival of the Silk Road. So in ancient times, you used to have a trade route called the Silk Road, which would start in China and go all the way through Asia, and of course pass through Syria, right? Through Aleppo, through Palmyra, which are UNESCO World Heritage Sites. And so the idea with the new Silk Road is that you bring back this massive, infamous trade route, which benefits everybody, really. And you add to it a maritime trade route, and make it very, very complex and something that looks like this, right? And so Syria has to be a part of that. Why? Because Syria has access to the Mediterranean Sea, okay? Remember that just a few weeks ago, Iran and Iraq signed a railway deal. So it's like putting together a jigsaw puzzle. You've got this road, this literal, Silk Road that starts in China, goes through Asia. Now you need to get from Iran to Iraq, so you have the railway. And then when you get into Iraq, you need to get to Syria to get to the Mediterranean Sea, right? So one piece at a time, everything's being put together. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And the fact that, there are these sanctions on Syria, these Caesar Act sanctions, which, remember, the sanctions are illegal, right? They're unilateral coercive measures. They have no validity whatsoever. So the United States couldn't win by overthrowing Assad. They couldn't win militarily. So now they try to squeeze Syria, make people's lives so miserable that they go and overthrow the president. That's the idea behind sanctions. It's like siege warfare. So they're turning up the heat on Syria and saying any country that does business with Syria in any capacity, you're selling microwaves, you're giving toothpaste, doesn't matter. Banned, we will take your assets, we will seize your assets, we will, basically cancel your visas, you will not allowed to have any business you won't be allowed to have any business in the US, etc., right? They scare you. China doesn't give a crap. China says, I really don't care. As a matter of fact, I'm going to show you just how much I resent your sanctions. I'm going to invite Bashar al-Assad all the way to China. Red carpet. So you see why this is so important, okay? If you don't count the Arab countries that Assad has visited in the last years, you have, okay, because I'm talking about like Saudi Arabia and the Emirates. Let's just look at the other ones. What are the only non-Arab countries that Bashar al-Assad has visited? Russia, Iran, and now China. It's not a coincidence, right? It's not a coincidence. These are the spearheads, right? These are the ones leading the charge towards a multipolar world. And Syria is going to be a part of that multipolar world. No question about it, right? No question about it. So what have they done now? They've signed agreements. It's not just about, oh, hello, it's nice to meet you. No. They're getting down to business, tout de suite. So you can see here they were meeting. Unfortunately, there are no subtitles to this. It's just, I just want to show you the video, right? So Xi Jinping is over there, and you can see Bashar al-Assad on the left. And, you know, they're hashing things out. And, of course, you have the Syrian foreign minister, Faisal al-Mikdad, who's accompanying Bashar al-Assad. And they've signed several agreements now, okay? So they've signed a memorandum of understanding. And remember, these are in addition to the fact that Syria already joined the Belt and Road Initiative, which is also another way of saying the new Silk Road. So now they've signed agreements in regards to nanotechnology, mobile phones, medical equipment, all sorts of industrial machines and capacities and capabilities, basically increasing the number of Chinese exports, scholarships as well, having people from Syria go and study in China, training them in China, in whatever field it is, right? And then having them come back to Syria and reteach and use the experience that they've gained in China, right? This is also very, very important. This learned experience and the degrees that they would earn in China to bring back that knowledge to Syria, because unfortunately you've had a large brain drain occurring in Syria, right? So brain drain is when you have all the so-called, skilled labor, which is, I don't really like that term, but they basically mean all the people with diplomas leaving the country for whatever reason it is. And in this case, it was war, of course, right? So, a lot of people with diplomas, architects, doctors, lawyers, whatever, who now they've left Syria because of the war. And now the countries that take them in, they get to benefit from a free workforce, right? So Turkey is about 2-3 million Syrian refugees. Germany, I think, is the next country that took in the most Syrian refugees. Canada, all these countries now have a free workforce, which they also helped create, right? Remember, a lot of these countries, Turkey especially, they helped create the situation in Syria. They were funding and are funding a lot of terrorist groups in Syria, okay? So China is China has a completely different attitude when it comes to foreign policy. And their idea is that they're going to deal, on respectful terms with any country. They're not going to go into a region taking sides, and that includes the Middle East, right? Which, I take issue with, because for China doesn't want to get involved in, Syria and Israel have a fight. China doesn't care. China's going to do business with Israel, and it's going to do business with Syria, okay? So, yeah, I have a problem with that, but again, at least the Chinese, they're consistent with their foreign policy. They actually want to be neutral. It's not like some facade or something, right? So in this case, of course, with Syria, this is a much, much deeper relationship than China has with other countries. Okay, when you had Bashar al-Assad and Xi Jinping speaking today, they're very, very clear, in how they pick their words and choose their words. They were saying multipolar world, so this is it's part of this whole vision. It's about fixing instability, right? So in the face of all the instability that has been inflicted on Syria, China is going to be a stabilizing factor, right? China is going to come in and try to fix that, basically. And remember, China for many years has protected Syria at the United Nations. So when we look at the Security Council, you have 5 permanent members and 10 others that rotate, and the permanent members include China, Russia, the UK, US, and France, right? So basically the victors of World War II. And if you're a permanent member on the Security Council, you have veto power. So whatever resolution somebody tables, you can just strike it down. And that's exactly what China and Russia have done for many years, right? China protected Syria from, resolutions that were trying to legalize, basically, a strike on Syria or sanctions on Syria. China shut them down every time, okay? And so you've seen that for a long time now, that China just doesn't care about the U.S. sanctions, about U.S. agenda or EU agenda in Syria, and it really just wants to protect Syria. And it understands that there's a critical role to be played when we talk about the Silk Road. Okay, China's also like come out and said the United States is stealing oil from Syria, so they're not afraid to say the truth, right? So this is all about strengthening ties and making sure that when time comes to really, put that new Silk Road into practice, that Syria is going to be there, and Syria is going to be capable enough, meaning Syria will have the infrastructure there existing and the people trained and ready to accommodate this new Silk Road, which will, of course, offer China a gateway into the Mediterranean Sea. So absolutely, absolutely crucial, right? Absolutely crucial. This is really, really important for China to do. Okay, not because it's China that benefits from it. Everybody benefits from it. Remember, when we talk about the Mediterranean Sea, you have Latakia port in Syria. A few years ago, China, for example, they donated 800 generators to Latakia port. And look at the difference in behavior. China gives infrastructure, donates industrial machines and parts to Syria. Turkey steals Syria's industry, like literally going in the factories, dismantling all the machines and taking the stuff into Turkey, right? Thousands of machines. And then Israel bombs Latakia port, which I just mentioned, right? And then they say, I mean, I even posted it. There's like a container on fire, and it's Nescafe 3-in-1, like these bags of instant coffee that are on fire. But according to Israel, there are weapons in the port. I mean, yeah, so what? Let's say there are weapons in the port. I mean, it's okay for NATO to give Ukraine all these weapons, but it's not okay for Iran or Russia to give Syria weapons. Come on. In any case, it's just a lie. The real reason, and I'm going to get into that afterwards when I talk about Netanyahu and Saudi Arabia, there's another agenda at play here. It's not about weapons, being in Latakia. It's something else. So basically, the UN last year, they said that Syria needs around $400 billion in investments to rebuild the country. $400 billion. So you see, remember this when you hear something like, oh, well, the United States is giving $15 million in aid to Syria. Those are pennies. Those are literally pennies compared to the damage that has been done to Syria. 400 billion versus a few million. That is pocket change. It's an insult, right? Never mind the oil that's being stolen, which the United States then sells, or even if it doesn't sell it, it's still depriving Syrians of that money, right? Of that revenue. So you see the difference in behavior, right? It's quite staggering. And let me show you here. This is from Global Times, right, which is a Chinese outlet. They were saying that Xi Jinping emphasized that China will continue to firmly support Syria on issues concerning its core interests and major concerns, work with Syria to safeguard the common interests of developing countries. So basically, they're talking about BRICS and Belt and Road, and support Syria in opposing foreign interference, Israel and America and Turkey and Saudi Arabia and so on, rejecting unilateralism and bullying, and safeguarding national independence, sovereignty, and territorial integrity, right? This is also from Press TV. An analyst they were interviewing said that Beijing and Damascus are likely to come up with investment agreements in line with efforts to reconstruct Syria and undo the destruction caused by foreign-backed terrorists, right? So China basically wants to increase Syria's economic power through its own, of course, right? Remember, China is the largest emerging economy in the world. China is on track to overtake the US, let's put it that way. So these agreements will be expanded to include food, pharmaceutical, and technological sectors, and China could help ensure Syria's food security at a time when conflicts, including the Ukraine war, have challenged the global markets, right? And of course, combating the Caesar Act sanctions, which I was just talking about a moment ago. So this is really enormous. I really cannot overstate enough how important this is. And it's so funny because I was watching, I was basically listening to what the media are saying about it and so on. And I came across this Israeli channel, right? I wanted to see what they were saying about this visit. And so I don't know who this dunce is, this absolute dunce that they were interviewing is, but she said something like, China is basically China is trying to court the global south at the same time that the US is trying to court the global south. The US, who said the US is trying to court the global south? The US doesn't give a crap. The US is trying to rob the global south, more like it, you know? And that China is basically just trying to, you know, tick off like check boxes, you know, and I mean, just add Syria to the list of countries that is courted. What is this bullshit analysis? Such garbage, like absolute garbage. You're so dumb. It's about the Mediterranean Sea. I just spelled it out for you, man. It's about Belt and Road. This from CGTN. Beyond economics, there is a need for interpersonal engagement between Syria and China. Scholarships for professional training in Syria are becoming more prevalent in China, right? Syrian professionals might learn about global best practices, new technology, and advanced education in China via training scholarships. These are the same ones I mentioned earlier, right? So these trained people might return to Syria with significant information and experience, helping the country to thrive. Such programs demonstrate the many advantages of international relationships beyond trade, right? Beyond just trade. So this is where we're at. This is where we're at. Okay. And I'm gonna get into this in a separate video, but you really have a competition right now, not between the US trying to court the global south. This is rubbish. You have a competition right now between BRICS and you know the New Silk Road and the global south versus Israel, Saudi Arabia, the United States, and their system, their economic pipeline. And I'm going to go into that in a bit momentarily. Okay, so just to wrap this up, once again, huge news. What an absolute slap in the face of Charles Lister and Obama and Cameron and Boris Johnson, all of them, every single one of them. This is such a slap in the face. You know, they were saying for years, Assad must go, Assad has to go. Like, you know, there's a joke, there's a meme online, although it's really not a joke. It's scary. It's ominous and eerily true. There's something called the Assad curse, right? So every politician that said Assad has to go ends up going themselves, right? So they either lose their jobs or they get kicked out or their terms are up and they're gone. And Assad is still there. Assad remains. It's funny. It's really funny. Actually, I'm going to look it up for you right now. Hold on. Let me look this up. They have complete memes about this, right? Yeah. This is one of them. Take a look. Assad must go curse. So they're all gone, but he's still there. There's even an extended version, right? Because as time goes on, the list of people gets longer as time goes on. Yeah, it's really funny. Look, Sarkozy is gone, right? Obama is gone. Cameron is gone. Down here we've got Boris Johnson, Trump. They're all gone. Hollande is gone. All of them. And he's still there. And so I find this very funny because, you know, Assad must go. Yeah, he went. Where did he go this year? He went to the Arab League. Syria's back in the Arab League. Syria, you know, got its ties back with Jordan. So, you know, a blooming of ties with Jordan, Tunisia, Saudi Arabia, with Egypt, and, you know, of course, Syria joining the Belt and Road Initiative last year, and now Assad goes to meet Xi Jinping, and of course I mentioned Russia and China, where he also visited. And the UAE is another country, but that was that's more than a year ago. So yeah, Assad must go, but not in the direction that you think. Let's put it that way. I really have no doubt that they're crying their eyes out right now, because you have a lot of, like, you know, bitter Syrian opposition people, and you know, like spooks, and people like Charles Lister, who really worked hard to get rid of the government in Syria, and they failed so bad. It's so bad, and it's so funny watching the commentary in the news. You know, like, they just cannot explain. They cannot understand why, you know, Syria is being brought back into the fold and normalized. No, you're the ones who need to be normalized, you know, with your behavior. What they did against Syria is very, very, very dirty. Very dirty. The dirtiest modern war that I can think of, without question. The dirtiest campaign. So many countries, so many groups. Jesus, it's still not even done. It's still not even over. It's still going on. So before I think anything can proceed, what needs to happen is that Iran and Russia and Hezbollah and PMU and so on, they need to get rid of the Americans who are stealing the oil and occupying 1/3 of Syria. and, get rid of Turkey, which is also occupying another chunk of Syria, and get rid of Israel, which is in the south, occupying the Golan Heights, right? They've tried to carve it up in a million pieces. But China and others like it who are civilized, right, who practice, foreign policy based on mutual respect, based on agreement, who don't steal, who rather, instead of stealing, come to agreements, that are mutually beneficial. That's what China's doing. They're smart. They get it.